Hello and what's up, Helldivers? I am on Gacha right now, and as you can see, we are fighting some bugs. We are back in the game, and there is a lot to talk about here. So first off, this is unscripted, so there'll be some pauses, some some going back on points. I do apologize for that, but it is kind of like how I like to do videos, and I hope that you will enjoy it. Let's talk about the new patch that just dropped yesterday, September 17th, for Helldivers, because it is a big one. Last we spoke, you might have noticed, I was not very happy with the state of the game. It was really unfun, and I was having a lot of trouble with it. And I've got to say that my opinion has definitely shifted. We are seeing some really great buffs coming out of Arrowhead. We're seeing some great actions, which is the really important thing. We were dealing with a lot of promises, but not a lot of actions, and this patch is a lot of actions. So without further ado, let's get into the good, the neutral, and, unfortunately, some bad as well. Alright, let's talk about some good right here. So, we do have some good things going on. We've got weapon buffs galore. Now, I'm not going to go through every single thing in the patch notes. I'm going to throw some stuff up on screen as I'm going. It might cover the video footage just a little bit, and that's the whole point. But there are a few weapons that I would really like to talk about, and the general philosophy and how I think that perhaps it's changed in Helldivers, and why you should maybe give Helldivers another chance if you're like me and you set down that cape waiting for that 60-day plan. So first off, the Eruptor. As you can see this beautiful baby in my hand, it is 100% shrapnel. Beautiful. So it's got shrapnel added to it. It can now take out multiple targets at once. It can start taking out targets that were maybe a little harder to hit from the front. There you go, right under the legs right there. Canister is always empty, but that's about the same. They did not change everything. They did not fix everything about the shrapnel. Excuse me, they did not fix everything about the Eruptor, but they fixed a lot of it, and I'm very happy with it. The Crisper here, you can see, got a fix where it's actually useful. It seemed to do a good amount of damage. That's because the Flamethrower itself also got a fix. So, here's the really big one, and this one, title card, put it in your memory. They said that they would not revert the changes to the Flamethrower, and with this patch, they have done so. They turned around, they added a bunch of damage to it, they made it so that it could damage heavy armored targets. Look at that. That's what Helldivers is all about. They said that you could damage heavy armored targets with it. It is just fantastic. Moving on, let's talk a little bit about the railgun. Now, I was not a big railgun user back in the day. It was a little bit before my time of starting the game, but it has received a giant buff with nearly quadruple the damage. Let's call down our stuff here real quick. With nearly quadruple the damage. It's beautiful. It has even more damage when you overcharge it, which I think is well worth that. There we go. We also have to talk about the Liberator. Oh my god, the Liberator set. So, every single one of the Liberators has been updated. So the Guard Dog on the Guard Dog Liberator will have the bonuses. The Liberator Carbine, the Liberator Concussive, the normal Liberator, they upped the damage on it, and it is just fantastic. It can now take down enemies rather quickly. At least you're not running into that feeling where you're like, well, why the heck am I shooting this enemy? I can't seem to take it down. Now you can. Basic Liberator, primary weapon, can deal damage. Sickle, also another great change. They reduced the cooldown on it. They upped some of the damage for it. They made it so that it catches things on fire even faster. So great. Thermite. I sincerely hope in this video that I get a charger to throw this Thermite at to show you. It is so strong now. It will stick to the target. It takes about 3 seconds to go off, but at that point it will delete just about anything it is stuck to with a whopping 2,000% damage. It went from 100% damage to 2,000% damage. Insane. And then finally, the last thing that I really want to highlight, although there are so many other great things going on in the patch notes, is the fact that gas has gotten a rework. Now this stratagem will, once it hits the enemy, it will cause confusion, making them mill about, causing blindness, and oftentimes making them attack each other. And I would really like to congratulate Arrowhead on this change before their patch, because the last time they dropped a giant warbond, the last time they dropped a warbond, they actually changed stuff about it and made it worse. Now, I will say they did decrease the gas's damage considerably, but the payoff for that is the new confusion effect, which keeps bugs in the gas, keeps them taking damage continuously, and can cause them to attack each other. It is beautiful. There are also so many changes to enemy armor. Almost every enemy has had its armor reduced. Chargers have had their armor reduced. Bile Titans have had their armor reduced. Tanks have had their armor technically increased. But most enemies had their armor reduced. It means that if you do not have an anti-tank weapon, you are still more than likely going to be able to harm it if you've got any kind of armor penetrating. It is really great. Now, of course, there are still some weapons that just cannot harm targets, so you've still got your target indicators telling you whether or not you're actually working. Really, really good changes here. And then the second really big change that I really liked is the rocket devs. Now, the rocket devastators are no longer going to have infinite spamming rockets. They are going to have a limited amount. They will have a cooldown in which they have to reload. And they only have, I think, one of those reloads, making them an absolute... While still dangerous in the initial encounter with them, they no longer provide that spam. They no longer are just a stun lock into death, and I am here for it. We will take that there. One small minor change they changed is that you actually have to stand there and fully salute. If you do not, it will not open. I think that's a funny change, and I'm here for it. Alright. Now that we talked a little bit about some great things, some buffs and some nerfs, let's get into some of the more neutral things. First off, I'm going to talk about the Commando. Unfortunately, the Commando did receive a nerf. Technically, it is a fix, but it is a nerf. Where it can no longer one-shot fabricators. It two-shots them. That's right, they actually changed the way that fabricators worked. I'm still putting this under neutral because it is a significant nerf to it, but it is a buff to actually the spear and the EAT, because those can one-shot them from any area. They can one-shot them with a single rocket. The Commando takes 2 of them. That is the change that they made to the fabricator, and that is listening to your community, hearing them say, "We absolutely adore this, please do not change it," and that is what well, they did change it a little bit. They changed it in a way that leaned into the community, which is the same thing that they did with the Orbital Precision Strike, and is one of their best qualities, when they hear their community and they respond accordingly. One of my largest complaints, I should say, is that the escalation of freedom of enemies are all at the higher difficulties. They are not, you can't really see them from the lower difficulties, and they didn't change anything like that, so I'm going to say that's a neutral. You still need to be willing to play the higher difficulties to see some of these new enemies. It's not the end of the world. I would just like to see some of, the Alpha Commanders and things in lower levels. For anyone who is kind of a lower level player that just enjoys killing massive amount of bugs, like I do. And then, of course, there are still some glitches and crashes in the game that are still not fixed, unfortunately. Then let's move on to some bad things, and I unfortunately do have 2 minor things to say about the patch that I will say are maybe not their best move, and that is that they very, very, very much decided that there would be times where they would up enemy damage. Notably, the chainsaws on the berserkers that follow you around, the hunters have their damage up a little bit. You can feel it a little bit more. Things that were already dealing a lot of damage are dealing even more, and sometimes one-shotting. And that is an unfortunate change that I don't think that they needed to add. I think we were already really, really squishy, and it will tie into my second point here, which is Helldiver health is now effectively lower. And if you're not sure what that means, so they wanted to remove the amount of damage that you could take as a random headshot, and that was great. They needed to reduce that, a little less RNG. Bots hit things just randomly, and so they could just randomly shoot you in the head versus in the arm, and take you out really, really quickly. They changed that so you take less damage to the head, but to sort of counterbalance that, they decided that you would take more damage to the limbs in general, and the net overall is that we are squishier. Once again, we are just a little bit less than we were before the patch. And that is the one bad thing that I will say. I don't think that that was a necessary change, and it would be the one thing from the patch I would say they should maybe not do. They should revert that change. Beyond that, fantastic. This patch has been absolutely beautiful, and I have enjoyed playing it. Alright, let's do some final thoughts here before we sign out. Once again, please remember we are a little unscripted, so if I've rambled, I'm so sorry, but that's just what I do. Alright, let's talk final thoughts here, and the final thoughts are, this is a good patch for everybody. The changes to the weapons make them feel more effective, make you feel more effective. They are able to down things a lot quicker. Breakpoints on enemies that we were not hitting, we would have to use like an extra bullet to do a single point of damage. That is no longer so much of a factor, and I am here for that as well. We are enjoying ourselves in Helldivers, and if you have put down your cape, if you're not sure, if you've decided that you don't want to play anymore because of the nerfs, of the PS4 action, anything like that, I understand. I did the same thing. I put down my cape for about a month there, and I have picked it back up. My channel will be continuing to do Helldivers, and I think that if you are even a moment curious, if you're just, even for a second, curious about this, you should go ahead and pick it up as well, because it is well worth it. A lot of the fun has returned. Look at that explosion, beautiful. A lot of the fun is returned. A lot of the things that made Helldivers really, really great is just back. And I think that this is well worth your time and thoughts. If you think the same, if you're enjoying it, please make sure that you drop a note down below in my comments, say that you're enjoying the game. If you are returning Helldiver, let me know if you are returning because of this patch. And if you've been here the entire time, then give me a good old welcome back. I would be very happy to see you. Thank you all for taking the time to say hello to me, and have a wonderful day. Happy Helldiving out there, Helldivers.